Hi and welcome to part 7 of Lola Rose by Jacqueline Wilson, continuing from chapter 19, Treats. "I'll go and see your mum this morning," said Auntie Barbara. "I'm coming too," I said. "And me," said Kendall. "Will it upset him?" Auntie Barbara mouthed. "Probably," I mouthed back. I was worried Mum might be upset with me for calling Auntie Barbara. We went to the hospital together, Auntie Barbara striding confidently down the ward, Kendall and I scuttling along behind her. Mum was lying on her back, looking towards us, her face screwed up. "Oh, God, what are you doing here?" she said rudely. Auntie Barbara blinked, but then she laughed cheerfully. "Good to see you too, Nicky," she said, and bent down to give her a kiss. I was sure Mum would wriggle away. She didn't. Her good arm hooked around Auntie Barbara's neck, and she hugged her hard. "So, how are you?" said Auntie Barbara. "Fine," said Mum. She still had great wads of bandage on her breast and under her arm. Her face was ghostly pale, without her makeup, and her hair hung in limp strings. She pulled me close for a hug too, whispering in my ear, "Has Jake been in touch?" "No," I said wretchedly. Mum sighed as if it was somehow my fault. "Lola Rose has been a little star, Nick. She's been so responsible and grown up." Yeah. Takes after you then, doesn't she?" said Mum. "Kendall's been brilliant too," said Auntie Barbara. She was laying it on a bit thick now. Kendall had been a right pain. Mum just gave a little snort. "Mum," said Kendall. He climbed up onto the bed, wanting to see her face. He frowned at her. "You look horrid, Mum." "Thanks a bunch," Mum muttered, pushing him away. "Get off the bed, Kendall. I don't want you breathing all over me." Kendall slid off the bed, tears in his eyes. He looked at me to make it better. I knew he hadn't meant to be unkind. He was worried that Mum still looked so ill. "I don't like you," he said, his lip trembling. "I don't like you either," Mum said, shutting her eyes. "I don't want you for my mum any more," Kendall said, tears spilling. "I want Auntie Barbara." I covered his mouth up quick. "He doesn't mean it, Mum," I said hurriedly. Maybe he did. He thought Auntie Barbara was wonderful. She knew all about sharks for a start. She'd been on holiday to America and seen the island where they made the old movie Jaws, the one where the shark chews people's legs off when they're swimming in the shallows. Auntie Barbara got it out of the video shop for Kendall that evening. He watched it sitting on her vast lap. George clutched to his chest. Auntie Barbara was worried that he might be frightened, but he didn't seem to mind a bit. He only got upset at the end when the shark died. I couldn't watch any of it. I sat cross-legged with my back to the telly, working on my scrapbook, a pile of magazines by my side. I was doing a favourite food page for our family, Mum, Auntie Barbara, Kendall and me. It was difficult to balance the page. Auntie Barbara had heaps and heaps and heaps. I had lots. Mum had hardly anything if you didn't count wine and ciggies. And Kendall just had a red ice lolly. "Did you see sharks when you were on holiday, Auntie Barbara?" Kendall asked. "Not swimming in the sea. I saw whales, though, lots of humpback whales. I've got photos at home. I'll show you sometime." I went out in this special whale-watching boat. The whales like to eat plankton, so they blow out the sticky stuff and all the little fishy things get stuck, and then the whales come along and go chomp, chomp, chomp. Auntie Barbara mimed it for us. Kendall did his best to imitate her and blew sticky stuff out of his nose by mistake. "Have you ever been to Disneyland, Auntie Barbara?" I asked. "My friend Harpreet has, and she says it's the best place in the whole world." "I haven't ever been there. Still, maybe we could go someday." "You mean you and Kendall and me and Mum?" "But how could we afford it? The lottery money's all gone." "I could treat us," said Auntie Barbara. "Are you rich?" Kendall asked excitedly. "Not rich, but I'm reasonably well off. I suppose now your granddad's passed the pub on to me. I don't spend much on clothes and posh cars and stuff, but I do like to go on good holidays. I went to Thailand last year. It's a fantastic country and lovely, lovely people. I've got this smashing Thai family who do the meals in my pub now. Have you kids ever had Thai food?" "We have Chinese takeaway. I like chicken chow mein," I said. "You wait till you try Thai. It's truly scrumptious." "Truly's in Chitty Chitty Bang Bang," said Kendall, proud because he'd remembered. "We had the video at our old home," I said. "It's a play now, with a real car that flies right up in the air. We could go sometime if you like," said Auntie Barbara. We stared at her. It was as if she was taking us in a magic car, flying us out of our own dull life to a dazzling magical land where everything seemed possible. She took us up to town on Sunday morning and said we could go anywhere we wanted. Kendall chose the aquarium. Surprise, surprise. Auntie Barbara was very understanding when I explained I couldn't go in. She sat me on a bench overlooking the river. "You sure you'll be okay?" "Yeah, of course," I said. I wasn't. The sharks were shut up in the aquarium, but I couldn't shut all my other worries up. They swam around and around my head. I felt really guilty that Kendall and I were having a good time with Auntie Barbara, while Mum was stuck in hospital, still not better. She'd looked so small when we'd said goodbye. I was scared she'd shrink every time we went to see her, until one day she'd be just a hank of hair, a few bones and a bandage. I was scared I might start crying, so I tried to distract myself. I gathered up some sweet wrappers and started tearing them up and sticking them with spit onto my arm like tattoos. I'd seen a picture of a snail made out of coloured paper at school, so I copied that. And then I did a butterfly and a ladybird and a rose. Auntie Barbara sucked in her breath when she saw. I thought she'd make me pick all the papers off and give me a lecture about licking dirty bits of paper. Mum would have, but Auntie Barbara held my arm up and inspected it closely, smiling. "Do you like Matisse?" she said. I'd never even heard of Matisse, so she took us to the Tate Modern. Kendall moaned and said it was going to be boring, boring, boring. But when we walked around, all along the riverbank to this huge gallery, he ran around all over the place and no one seemed to mind. There was a special Matisse exhibition. I wasn't sure I liked his work at first. All the paintings were a bit squiggly and didn't look real, though I liked the bright colours. Auntie Barbara liked a picture of a big lady lying back on a sofa in funny floppy trousers. She said she'd have a go at making some similar trousers for herself. She makes most of her clothes because she's so huge she can't find anything in the shops. "I'll make you a pair of stripy trousers too, Lola Rose," said Auntie Barbara. She saw the look of horror on my face. "Joke," she said, laughing. We turned a corner, and there was the school snail picture, absolutely huge, bigger than Auntie Barbara. "It's a collage," I said. "Do you know something? I think your collage work knocks spots off old Matisse. I love that food picture you did last night. Hey, talking of food, I'm starving. Let's go and find the cafe." We all had sausages and mash. Kendall turned his sausages into sharks and made them swim in the mashy sea, but then he ate them all up. I ate mine too, and then a big strawberry cheesecake. But on the bus to the hospital, I started to feel sick. Kendall went quiet too. Auntie Barbara put her arms around us. "Will Mum be better now?" Kendall asked. "Let's hope so," said Auntie Barbara, which wasn't quite the same as a straight yes. When we got to the ward, Mum was propped up on her pillows, her hair carefully brushed, her makeup pink and pretty, almost her old self. "You are better, Mum," said Kendall. "Yeah, I'm going home tomorrow. They've promised," said Mum. "That's great news, Nick," said Auntie Barbara. "Victoria," said Mum. "Victoria Luck, Lady Luck," I said. "That's right, that's me," said Mum. But she wasn't looking at me. Her eyes kept swivelling past all of us. We stayed for a while. Auntie Barbara and me trying to chat to Mum, Kendall sitting on the floor muttering to George. Mum slid further and further down the bed, barely replying. Then she suddenly sat up straight. She licked her lips and then bared her teeth in a big smile. I looked around. Jake was shuffling up the ward, clutching a small bunch of carnations, the sort you buy outside a garage for $2.99. Mum behaved as if he'd given her an armful of hothouse lilies. She gave him a really smoochy movie star kiss right in front of us. Jake's mouth was all wet when he pulled away. He lifted his arm as if he wanted to wipe it. Mum was gazing up at him. His arm froze. He looked like a statue saying hello, and then he waved it awkwardly at Kendall and me. "Hi, kids," he said. He nodded nervously at Auntie Barbara too. "Hi, I'm Victoria's sister," she said. Jake looked astonished. Auntie Barbara watched him, waiting for some crass comment. She seemed utterly composed, but I saw her fingers fidgeting behind her back, digging hard at a hangnail. It must be awful. Everyone always amazed that two sisters could look so different. Jake managed to hold his tongue. Mum patted the bed, making him sit beside her. I saw her wince slightly when he sat down heavily, but she didn't say a word. He could have used the bed as a trampoline and she wouldn't have complained. "How lovely of you to come and see me, Jake," she said, like it was a huge surprise, though I found out later she'd begged a loan of a mobile from another patient and left urgent messages at his art college. I suppose it was good he came. Maybe he loved Mum a little bit. Maybe he thought she was about to die and might leave him something. Not that she had anything, just a suitcase of clothes, a few bits of furniture and 2 kids. Mum seemed to have forgotten all about us. She chatted non-stop to Jake, 2 pink smudges of rouge standing out on her pale cheeks. Jake hardly said a word. He looked relieved when Kendall edged towards him. "How's my little pal, eh?" said Jake. He picked Kendall up and plonked him on his lap. Kendall kicked his legs happily. "Careful," said Mum, frowning at Kendall. "Does it hurt a lot?" Jake asked, looking stricken. No, hardly at all. And don't worry, I'm still all in one piece," said Mum, patting her bandages gingerly. "It's all thanks to you, Jake, darling. If you hadn't found the little lump and made me go to the dock, then I'd have been up the creek without a paddle." "I want to paddle," said Kendall, not understanding. "Mum, Auntie Barbara's taking us to the seaside to see sharks and whales, and then we're going to Disneyland." "Oh, yeah? What's that whizzing past?" Whoops, it's a flying pig, said Mum. Kendall lost track altogether, but didn't seem to mind. Paddle, paddle, paddle. George and me are going to paddle, he sang. He kicked his legs again, pretending to paddle. He caught Mum on her side. It wasn't her sore chest or arm, but it must have hurt. Her eyes blinked, but she stayed smiling bravely. Jake eased Kendall off his lap and stood up. Where are you off to? Said Mum. I'm sorry, Vic. I've got to go. But you've only just got here. Yeah, well, I've things to do. You know how it is. Mum knew. She couldn't bear it. She waited until he was out of sight and then started sobbing. Auntie Barbara reached out to hold her hand, but she snatched it away. Don't, Nick. He's not worth it, Auntie Barbara said softly. How would you know? Mum sobbed. Yeah, how would I? Said Auntie Barbara. She put her arm around Kendall and me. Come on, kids. Stop making such a fuss of those kids. They're mine, Mum cried. Mum's tired, said Auntie Barbara. We'll go now. What time do you think they'll let you out tomorrow? I'll come and collect you in the car. It won't be till lunchtime, and I'll get myself home, thanks very much, Mum sniffed. Sure, said Auntie Barbara, but I'll come at lunchtime even so. Auntie Barbara made us both go to school on Monday, even though we argued. No, I'll need to concentrate on your mum. We've got some stuff to sort out, and I don't want you to miss any more school. It'll be a waste of time sitting in lessons. I won't be able to take anything in, I said. I was right. I kept thinking about Mum. I told Harpreet Mum was getting out of hospital. She gave me a big hug and said she was very happy for me. So, she's better now? Yes, of course she is, or they wouldn't let her out of hospital, would they? I said. That's right, said Harpreet, patting my shoulder. Here, Lola Rose, Mum's put an extra bar of chocolate in my lunchbox. You can have it if you like. I had extra everything in my lunchbox because Auntie Barbara had packed it for me. Harpreet and I shared a wonderful feast of cream cheese and date and banana rolls, chicken salad sandwiches, vegetable chunks with their own special dip, salt and vinegar crisps, blueberry muffins, buttered fruit bread, rosy apples, cranberry juice, and a giant bar of Cadbury's chocolate. I'm going to get so fat, Harpreet said, rubbing her flat tummy. I am fat, I said. No, you're not. Well, not really, said Harpreet. You're bound to slim down a bit in your teens. You'll take after your mum. I hope so, I said. But if I don't, it's not so bad being fat, is it? No, of course it's not bad at all, said Harpreet comfortingly. But when we came out of school at the end of the afternoon, Harpreet stopped dead in the playground. Oh, my goodness, look at that fat woman, she gasped. She put her hand over her mouth and giggled. She wasn't the only one. Half the kids were gawping and nudging each other. Is she someone's mum? Harpreet spluttered. She's like an elephant, whoever she is. She's my Auntie Barbara, and you can just shut up, I said. I ran across the playground to the school gate where Auntie Barbara was waiting. She was wearing a blue denim shirt that could have sailed a ship. She held out her big blue arms, and I rushed up and hugged her in front of everyone. You look lovely, Auntie Barbara. I like that shirt. It matches your eyes, I said. Auntie Barbara hugged me harder. So, where's Mum? Did you go and fetch her? Why isn't she here? I said, my heart starting to pound. It's okay. She's at home resting. And she's all right, really. Well, said Auntie Barbara, she's okay, for the moment. Her words clanged in my head. The voice of doom repeated them. For the moment. I needed it to be forever. Harpreet was hovering, looking at me beseechingly with her beautiful big eyes. I'm so sorry, she mouthed at me. Auntie Barbara, this is my friend Harpreet, I said. Harpreet looked very relieved. She held out her hand politely. Pleased to meet you, Auntie Barbara, she said. She looked at me. You never said you had an auntie. Is she a real blood auntie or just a friend? I'm a real auntie and a friend, said Auntie Barbara. We went to collect Kendall and Amandeep from their after-school club. Amandeep hung back and acted shy, sucking her thumb. She can't help being a bit babyish, said Kendall, taking hold of Auntie Barbara's hand. Auntie Barbara, I love you. I love you too, Kendall, said Auntie Barbara. Will you take us to the aquarium? Auntie Barbara laughed, but I was shocked. Kendall, we're going straight home. Mum's back. Well, she can come too, said Kendall. Don't be silly. She's not well enough yet. She's always ill now, said Kendall, as if it was Mum's fault. Can't we go to the aquarium now and see Mum after? No, it's straight home, sweetheart, but we'll get you a red ice lolly on the way. How about that? What about you, girls? What's your favourite ice cream? I had a white Magnum, and Harpreet and Amandeep both had soft cornettos. Auntie Barbara had a double choc Magnum. She nibbled the chocolate off bit by bit, just the way I do. She made little noises. I do that too. We should have bought an ice cream for your mum, she said. What is she like? She doesn't often eat ice cream. She watches her figure, I said without thinking, and then I felt terrible. I watch my figure too, said Auntie Barbara. I watch my figure getting bigger. She said it like it was a poem, and then she pointed to places on herself and said, Cornetto, Cornetto, and Magnum, Magnum, Magnum. When we got to Harpreet's house, she whispered in my ear, "I love your Auntie Barbara, Lola Rose." "I love her too," I whispered back. I wish I was young enough to swing on Auntie Barbara's hand like Kendall. He started whimpering to go to the aquarium the minute he'd finished his ice lolly. "Now who's acting like a baby?" I said crossly. I knew why he was. I also almost wished we could go to the wretched aquarium. I was sort of scared of seeing Mum, even though I'd missed her so much. I was scared that she'd still look really ill. But when we let ourselves in the front door, we heard Mum talking. Someone was with her. I thought it must be Jake. It wasn't Jake. It was Dad. Chapter 20. The Fight. The flat started spinning. I nearly fell over. I heard a harsh laugh. It was Dad. No, it couldn't be Dad. He didn't know where we were. He couldn't possibly find us. He couldn't be real. This couldn't be happening. I had to be dreaming. If I closed my eyes tight and then opened them really wide, I'd wake myself up. I closed my eyes. The flat stopped whirling. Dad's voice stopped too. It was a dream. I opened my eyes wide, and there was Dad, right in front of me, his mouth a great grin, showing all his teeth. I gasped. Kendall cried out too. "Dad! Dad, it's my Dad!" he whooped. He hurtled forward, skinny arms elbowing me out of the way. Dad caught him and whirled him round and round. Kendall's shoes hit me hard on the head, making me reel again. I felt hands gripping my shoulders, holding me up. "Auntie Barbara." "Did you call Dad?" I whispered. She shook her head. She looked over at Mum, lying on the sofa, white jacket over her black nightie, her face a mask of makeup. "Mum?" I dodged past Dad and Kendall and ran to her. She put her hands up quickly to stop me. "Careful, careful. I'm still blooming sore, like I've done 10 rounds with Lennox Lewis. Hello, darling. Glad to see your Mum safely home, and Dad too. Isn't it a lovely surprise, eh?" I stared at Mum. She stared back at me, her chin up, but she couldn't quite meet my eyes. "It's time we got together again, Janie," she said. "We've all missed Dad terribly, haven't we? Kenny?" Yeah. Oh, Dad, you're the greatest. Whee!" Kendall yelled as Dad stuck him on his shoulders. "I'm the king of the whole world. Look, I can touch the ceiling." "Watch that light fitting, Kenny. You'll electrocute yourself," said Mum. I felt as if Mum had stuck us all into an electric socket. Fear sizzled through me, making my hair stand on end. Why had she done it? We'd spent all these weeks hiding from him, taking such care to start a new life so he couldn't trace us. I knew why. She'd been so scared in the hospital. She needed someone to make her feel good, to make her feel she still looked good. Jake had been useless, so she started thinking about the one man in the world who was crazy about her. She started spinning a little fairy tale, the way she always did. She'd kid herself. It would all be so different now. Dad would be shocked. She'd been so ill. He'd feel really bad and want to make it up to her. He'd have missed us so much. He'd realise just how much we meant to him. So he'd come back and he'd treat Mum like a queen. He'd never ever raise his hand to her again. He'd love her and cherish her and make her feel his special babe. We'd all play happy families and live happily ever after. Mum had done her best to turn herself into a fairy princess. She couldn't raise her bad arm, but somehow she'd bent over the basin and washed her hair one-handed. She'd painted her face with elaborate care. Her eyeliner was smooth, her lips outlined, without a single smudge, though her hands were shaking now. She shaved her legs and painted her toenails pink. She lay back in her careful pose, her jacket hiding the bulky bandage over her breast. She wanted the fairy tale to be real. Her eyes were going blink, blink, blink. She was wishing it inside her head. I wished it for her too. Maybe it really would come true. Dad wasn't laying into us. He was all lovey-dovey. "I've been doing my nut without you, babe," he said, sitting down beside Mum. Kenny stayed squealing on his shoulder. "I couldn't credit it when you played that vanishing trick on me. I thought, okay, you were teaching me a lesson. You'd stay away a couple of days, but you really meant it, didn't you, darling?" His voice thickened. Mum snuggled up to him, touching his face with her carefully painted fingers. "Not really, Jay, sweetheart. I don't know what I was thinking. I was scared, you know. I suppose I just flipped. I needed to protect the kids." "But you know I'd never lay a finger on my kids," said Dad. He yanked Kendall onto his lap and tickled him. "I love this kid of mine to pieces, can't you see that?" I felt as if I was falling down a tunnel. Dad was acting like he only had one kid. What about me? And what about the last time we'd been together? He didn't just lay a finger on me, he clenched his fist and punched me on the jaw, nearly knocking me out. I stared at Dad, shouting inside my head. He looked over at me, as if he could hear. He smiled. It was a shark smile. "Ah, Janie," he said, as if he just clapped eyes on me. "Aren't you going to give your old dad a kiss and tell him you're pleased to see him?" Mum held her breath, staring at me pleadingly. I pretended, for her sake. I pretended for my sake too, because I was scared out of my wits. I wanted to run right out of the room, down the stairs, down the road, run away forever. But I walked up to my dad. He put his arm around me. His lips nuzzled my ear, my neck. "That's my good little girl," he whispered. "Was it you who put your mum up to all this, eh?" I didn't know what to say. I started shaking. "Hey, are you shivering? You shouldn't be cold in that natty, furry jacket. Nice little bit of clobber, that. So, where's my fancy jacket, eh?" "We'll buy you one, darling," said Mum. So she hadn't let on that the money was all gone. "That's my babe, and my boy and my girl, my family, safely come back to me," said Dad, arms around us all, imprisoning us. Auntie Barbara was standing free, watching us. She had her arms folded across her chest, hands gripping her elbows as if she was trying to hold herself in. She was looking at Mum, like she couldn't quite believe it. Mum wouldn't look back at her, but Dad did. "So, Barbara," he said, "you were telling me porky pies when I came around to your pub." He put his head on one side, puffing out his cheeks, his voice a silly, high-pitched imitation. "Oh, no, believe me, Jay. Haven't got a clue where Nicky is. Haven't seen her for years. Last time I saw the kids, Kenny was a baby." "That was true, Jay," Auntie Barbara said steadily. "I didn't even have your address." "Liar. You can call me all the names you like. I'm used to it." "Ooh, what sort of names do you get called, little Barbie?" "I'm sure you're familiar with most of them," said Auntie Barbara. "I'll go and make us all a cup of tea, eh, Nicky? How are you feeling?" "Fine," said Mum. She looked grey underneath her makeup. "Barbara just came to look after the kids when I had to go into hospital for the op." "So, who called her then?" said Dad. I stayed very still. "I did," said Mum. "Why didn't you call me? They're my kids, for God's sake." "I know, darling, but I thought you might be freaked out by the whole hospital bit. Barbara, I'd love that cup of tea." "Yeah, OK, Barbara, you put the kettle on, like a Polly, and then you can pop off back to your pub," said Dad. "We don't need you now. We're going home too." He peered around the room, sniffing. "Whatever made you pick this dump, Nick? Are you sure this tumour isn't in your head?" "There's no tumour anywhere, darling. They've dug it all out of me. I'm as good as new," said Mum. "I hope so, babe. Couldn't bear it if you had to have one of your lovely boobies chopped off." "That's a really helpful attitude," said Auntie Barbara. We all tensed. Dad pushed Kendall, so he slid off his lap. "She didn't mean it to sound like that, Jay," said Mum. "What do you think I am? Thick? Don't look so worried, babe. Janie, stop that silly shivering. It's okay. I'm not going to blow my top, even with your fat freak of a sister. Hear that, Barbie? You trot off back to Big Daddy." "He's dead and gone," said Auntie Barbara, "and I don't think any of us should trot off tonight. Nicky's exhausted. She needs to rest, and she has to go back to the hospital next week for the results of her tests." "What tests?" said Dad. "Thought you said the tumour had gone, Nick." It has, said Mum. "They cut it all out. I'm fine now, just a bit tired." Her voice cracked, and tears started dribbling down her cheeks. "Don't cry, sweetheart. You know I can't bear it," said Dad. He pulled her close, so her head was against his chest. There, my little babe. It's okay. Your Jay's here now. I'll take care of you." He stroked her hair and kissed the tip of her nose as if she was a little girl. Mum hung on to him. "Oh, Jay, you promise? You really will take care of me?" "I swear I will, darling. You can count on me. You're my little babe, and I'm going to keep you safe. Now you lie back. No wonder you're tired. I'll tuck you up, eh? You could do with a little nap. We'll stay here for the night, if that's what you want. We'll get you back home tomorrow. I'll carry you in my arms if necessary. I'd carry you clear across the world, babe. You mean all the world to me. I was ready to top myself when you left. But I don't blame you, sweetheart. I'm not angry anymore. You were obviously getting sick already, not thinking straight. You panicked. I know. I understand. But now you can relax. We're going to start all over again. You and me and our little lad." "And Janie," Mum said. "And Janie," Dad said. I hated the way Dad was looking at me. I couldn't be his little girl anymore. He thought it was all my fault. Maybe it was my fault. My head felt as if it was being crushed. I couldn't hear. I couldn't see. I couldn't think. Then I felt those two steady hands on my shoulders. "Come and help me make the tea, Janie," said Auntie Barbara. She steered me out of the kitchen. I leaned against her. She wrapped her arms around me, bending over. "You can come and live with me if you like," she whispered. "He wouldn't let me." "We'll work it out somehow. I'm not going to let him hurt you, I promise." "But he'll hurt Mum." "Maybe they'll work something out," said Auntie Barbara. "Maybe he really will take care of her. Maybe this is his last chance and he's taking it." When we went back into the living room, Dad was trying hard, plumping up the pillows behind Mum and straightening the covers on the sofa bed. "That's my girl," he said. "There, is that comfier?" "Yes, Jay, much." "We'll tuck you right up, eh?" Dad said tenderly. "Let me take your jacket off. There now, don't worry. I won't hurt your poor chest. My brave little babe. You never make a fuss, do you? Well, you're not even going to get hurt again, I promise. We'll tuck you up tight, and you can have a lovely long snooze." You're so good to me, Jay, Mum said. That's right, babe. No one's ever looked after you the way I do, said Dad, tucking the cover in firmly. He felt something stuck under the mattress. He pulled it out. He held something crumpled and blue. He looked at it incredulously. What the bloody hell are these? He said. Dad held the blue boxer shorts out and waved them in the air so that the legs flapped. It looked comical, but no one laughed. Even Kendall ducked his head, elbows pressed against his sides. Mum stared at the shorts helplessly. What are they? Dad asked. They're underpants, Mum whispered. Yeah, right. I can see they are, said Dad, holding them out, practically thrusting them in Mum's face. That's not really the issue, is it, Nicky? Mum swallowed. Is it? Dad yelled. Don't shout, darling, please, Mum begged. I'll shout my head off until you tell me whose pants these are, said Dad. They were obviously Jake's. I hated him for being so careless, so forgetful. They're Kendall's, I blurted out. Ooh, Kendall's, are they? Said Dad. Why the fancy name, Kenny? Kenny tried to shrug, his shoulders wiggling. Are they your pants, Kendall? Said Dad. Bit big for you, aren't they? He held up the boxer shorts. They'd have reached right down to Kendall's ankles. I think you're telling me porky pies, Janie, said Dad. Leave the kids out of it, said Auntie Barbara. For God's sake, what does it matter whose stupid pants they are? Forget it. Let's have our tea. She passed Dad a mug, but he batted it away so that the hot tea sprayed everywhere, spattering Auntie Barbara's tie silk two-piece. Whoops, said Dad. Aha! Are they your pants, Barbie? No, I don't think so. A little on the small side this time. You're labouring the point, Jay, said Auntie Barbara, dabbing at her wet wraparound. Too right I am. I want an answer. Dad scrunched the pants up and wiped them around Mum's face like a flannel. Whose are they, Nicky? I don't know, Mum whispered. You don't know? So you've had so many men taking their clothes off since you've been here, you've lost track, have you? Mum shook her head, clutching her sore chest. Jay, I'm sorry. Please don't be angry. There was just the one guy, she wept. You slag, Dad yelled. He raised his hand, his fist clenching. I ran towards Mum. Auntie Barbara was quicker. Her own fists were clenched. She didn't hit Dad. She kicked him. Her foot shot up in its big purple suede sandal. She kicked him hard, right in the crotch. Dad gasped and doubled up. Auntie Barbara balanced herself on the balls of her feet, ready for when he got up. Dad got to his knees, clutching himself. You raise your hand one more time to Nick, or the kids, and I'll kill you, said Auntie Barbara. Dad staggered to his feet, his face contorted. He grabbed the tea mug and smashed it against the wall, and then he turned and came at Auntie Barbara again, the broken shards clutched in his hand. He went for her face, but she whirled her arm and chopped him hard on the shoulder with the side of her hand. He swayed, dropping the broken mug, his mouth open. I mean it, Jay, said Auntie Barbara. Now get out. Get out of this flat. Get out of their lives. Dad looked at Mum. I'm sorry, Jay, she sobbed. Just go now, please. Dad stood there, sobbing with rage. He looked around at all of us, and then he ran out, slamming the door behind him. We heard Miss Parker downstairs calling out, complaining at the noise. The front door slammed harder. Then there were footsteps and a banging on our door. We all thought Dad was back, but it was Andy and Steve from upstairs. You okay, Victoria? We heard the ruckus. Steve had grabbed an umbrella, Andy a saucepan. They weren't great weapons, especially not for a fight with my dad, but Auntie Barbara had beaten him. She stood in the middle of the room, breathing hard, tidying her purple top. We're fine now, but thanks so much for coming to protect us. Steve and Andy were obviously dying to stay and find out what had been going on, but Auntie Barbara gently but firmly told them Mum needed to rest now. They shuffled back upstairs obediently. I think we need a fresh pot of tea, said Auntie Barbara. She looked at Kendall. He'd wet himself, he'd been so scared. And you need a change of trousers, Kendall. OK, Lola Rose, I'll do the tea. You do the trousers. I looked over at Mum. She had her head buried in her hands. I hesitated. Let Mum have a little cry, said Auntie Barbara. I took Kendall into the bathroom. He started crying too. I'm a baby. I wet myself. No, it's okay, Kendall. I nearly wet myself. It was so scary. That man was Dad, wasn't he? Of course he was. I remembered him different, said Kendall. Yes. He shouted at me. He shouted at everyone. I thought he was going to hurt us, but then Auntie Barbara hurt him. Kendall wriggled out of his wet trousers and kicked his leg in imitation. He waved his arm, nearly whacking me on the head as I washed him. Watch out, Kendall. You watch out, Lola Rose, or I'll go kick, chop, thump like Auntie Barbara. How did she do that? I was glad Kendall had seen it too. Otherwise I'd have wondered if I'd imagined it. Already Auntie Barbara seemed to fly through the air in my memory, arms and legs whirling like a martial arts movie. Thai martial arts, said Auntie Barbara when we asked her. I went to see Thai boxing when I was in Thailand. It's amazing. They do it to music, and they use so many parts of their bodies as weapons. Their fists, elbows, knees, shins, and feet. When I came back, I saw there were some Thai boxing evening classes. I went along just to watch, but ended up joining in. I'd done some judo before, so it wasn't like I was starting completely from scratch. You joined in just like that? You are brave, Auntie Barbara. No, I'm not. I used to be scared to say boo to a goose when I was your age. Mum sniffled. You were Daddy's little darling. Big darling. You're so big you can even beat my dad, said Kendall. Will you really kill him if he comes back, I asked. No. Look, I'm thinking of becoming a Buddhist. They don't believe in killing anything, not even little creepy crawlies. But you could kill him if you wanted, if he was really, really hurting us. I don't know. Maybe. Auntie Barbara, can you stay with us for a bit, please, just in case Dad comes back? Auntie Barbara looked at Mum. I don't think your mum wants me to stay, she said. But she hasn't got much choice. Looks like you're stuck with me. Chapter 21. Treatment. Mum cried and cried. I couldn't work out why. Auntie Barbara had rescued us. Mum didn't still want Dad back, did she? She'd been just as scared as we were. I asked Auntie Barbara. I expect she's just worn out with everything, Pet, she said. She is better, isn't she? They did get all the tumour out. Yes, I think so. But she might have to have some treatment. What treatment? Let's just wait and see, shall we? Said Auntie Barbara. Well, she is going to be all right, isn't she? I hope so, darling. You promise? Auntie Barbara wavered. I wish I could promise you that, Lola Rose, she said. Mum seemed fine the next day. When Kendall and I came home from school, she was looking lovely, her hair newly coloured and styled. She was wearing her white jeans, but now they had embroidered pink roses up and down the seams. Has Jake been here? I asked. Has he, heck, said Mum. I did them. You're not the only one who can be creative, Lola Rose. They look lovely, Mum. You look lovely. Do I? Said Mum, preening. Well, I've got to tart myself up. I'm going job hunting tomorrow. Why don't you wait a bit, Nicky? Said Auntie Barbara. Give yourself time to get better. I am better, said Mum, and I need a job as soon as possible. I've got to feed these kids. I can take care of the bills for a bit, said Auntie Barbara. I don't want you to, said Mum. Haven't you been lecturing me all day about standing on my own 2 feet and not depending on anyone? I don't lecture, said Auntie Barbara, giving Mum a tiny push, and you'll never be able to stand on your 2 feet, not wearing those ridiculous high heels. Mum blew a raspberry at Auntie Barbara. Nag, nag, nag. Whinge, 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 said Auntie Barbara. Mum pulled a hideous face. Auntie Barbara pulled a worse one. They were like 2 silly kids. Aren't they childish, Kendall? I said, winking. I started singing Mum's Lucky song as I helped out get tea ready. Steak and chips and a watercress salad to build Mum up, and then strawberries and cream. I washed the watercress and took the stalks off the strawberries and whipped the cream. Kendall licked the bowl, singing the Lucky song too. Mum joined in, and Auntie Barbara. I thought she'd have a great big powerful singing voice, but she sounded sweet and girly, just like Mum. They started singing all these daft duets together. Mum didn't have the energy to dance, but she took off her high heels and kicked her feet up and down in the air. Auntie Barbara did dance, larking about, light on her toes in spite of her bulk. She picked Kendall up and danced with him. And then it was my turn. She whirled me around and around the room until Mum and Kendall blurred, and the room whirled with me. I felt so happy then, eating my treat tea. Sure, we really were lucky, lucky, lucky. Mum still had to go back to hospital to get the results of her tests. Auntie Barbara went with her. I hoped they might come to meet us from school. I wanted them to be waiting by the gate with big smiles on their faces. But they weren't there. Kendall and I walked home with Harpreet and Amandeep. I nattered to Harpreet all sorts of stupid stuff about boys and football and rock stars, but all the time I was chanting inside my head, let her be all right. Please, please, please. I tried not to walk on any cracks in the pavement in case it was bad luck. Are your shoes hurting you? Harpreet asked. No. So why are you walking funny, picking your feet up like a pony? Said Harpreet. Am I? I threw back my head and neighed. Give me a carrot and a sugar lump. You're nuts, said Harpreet, giggling. I'm a shark, not a pony, said Kendall. Watch me, Amandeep. He held his arm out like it was part of his head, opened his mouth as wide as it would go, and circled around us. Shut your mouth, Kendall. We can see your tonsils, I said. Hey, Harpreet, you should see my Auntie Barbara do her whale imitation. I like your auntie. So where is she today? She's with my mum, I said. My voice went wobbly. Kendall looked at me. He stopped being a shark. He put his hand in mine and hung on tightly all the way home. I knew it was bad news the moment we got in the door. Mum was hunched up on the sofa, chin on her knees, all her makeup cried away. Auntie Barbara tried to smile at us, but her eyes were red too. Oh, Mum, I cried. She held out her arms and we went rushing to her.
She cuddled us close, while Auntie Barbara hovered. "It's awful news," said Mum. "The lump was cancer, and now it's advanced. And it was in all the lymph nodes under my arm too. So I've got to have chemotherapy, so I shall puke all the time and I'll probably lose all my hair." She started weeping again. "You'll look funny without hair," said Kendall. "Shut up. Mum will still look pretty no matter what," I said fiercely, "just so long as she gets better." "But will I get better?" said Mum. "Of course you will," said Auntie Barbara. "And I could just as easily say, of course I won't," said Mum. "Do you know what the odds are, Lola Rose?" "Nicky, stop it. You shouldn't tell her all this. Look, she's my daughter. I'll tell her what I want. I don't have secrets from my kids. I've got a 50-50 chance, Lola Rose, even if I let them do all this chemo and radiation treatment. Fine sort of lady luck I am." I felt as if the voice of doom had burst out of my head and was booming the bad noise from a loudspeaker. It was so loud I couldn't think of anything else. Kendall didn't seem to understand properly and whined to watch television. He wouldn't eat his tea and got very boisterous at bedtime, leaping about all over the place, refusing to put his pyjamas on. Mum yelled at him. Kendall burst into tears and wouldn't stop. He screamed for hours until we were exhausted. When he finally settled, still snuffling in his sleep, Mum got Auntie Barbara to go down to the off-licence for a couple of bottles of wine. She drank steadily, swallowing the wine as if it was a medicine, until her head lolled and her eyes closed. "Time you were asleep too, Lola Rose," said Auntie Barbara. "I don't think I can," I said. "Come here." Auntie Barbara held me tight. I couldn't feel safe even with her arms around me. "It's so unfair," I mumbled into her shoulder. I know. I hate feeling scared all the time." "It's awful, isn't it? I just want Mum to be better and Dad to stay away and for us to be happy just like anyone else. And it's so bad of me, but I feel so cross with Mum." I burst out crying. "I know it's not her fault. She can't help having cancer, but it's like she's spoiling everything. Oh God, I'm sorry. I shouldn't say that. It's wicked. I'm wicked." "No, you're just worn out of worrying, darling. You're not wicked at all. You're the best girl ever. I'm so proud of my special niece. This is the one great thing for me, you know. I've met up with you and Kendall again. Will you really stay with us? I'll have to nip back home soon to start out the running of the pub, get some more clothes and go to my bank. But I'll come straight back. I promise. I'll be here for you, Lola Rose, no matter what." I put my hands either side of her big sweet face. Her blue eyes stared straight back at me. I knew she really meant it. I leaned against her and knew I loved her. Mum's treatment frightened me. She had to go to the hospital to have the chemicals dripped into her. Auntie Barbara stayed with her and drove her home. Then the sickness started. She had to have a bucket in bed because she couldn't always get to the toilet in time. They gave her more drugs to stop the sickness, but she still felt sick, yawning all the time, all white and sweaty and sad. "I'm being bloody poisoned," she groaned. "I'm sick of puking all over the place. I'm not going back to that hospital. I'm not going through with all of this." "Yes, you are," said Auntie Barbara. "You're going to have all the treatment and get better. Do you hear me?" "I'd sooner take my chances," said Mum. "Poor as they are?" "Yes, but you can't just think of yourself. There's the kids." "They'll be better off without me," said Mum. "No, we wouldn't," I cried. "We need you, Mum." "And I need you, darling," said Mum. "I love you, sweetheart. And little Kendall. I haven't always been a good mum to you, but do you think getting ill like this is a punishment?" "No, you've been the best mum ever," I said. "Haven't always been the best sister," said Mum, as Auntie Barbara held a cold flannel to her head. "True," said Auntie Barbara brusquely, "but cancer cells don't start multiplying just because you've been a bad girl in the past. Now stop whining, cuddle down, and try and get some sleep." "Bossy boots," said Mum, and then she reached out and grabbed Auntie Barbara's hand. "I'm sorry, Barbs, for everything." "I know. It's okay. It was all over ages ago. You actually did me a favour." "What favour? What did you do, Mum?" I asked. "Never mind, forget it," said Auntie Barbara. "I can't forget it. What if I'm going to die? I don't want to go to hell," Mum wept. "You're not going to die. Not yet. Not for years and years and years," said Auntie Barbara firmly. "And what's all this hell nonsense? Dad said I'd go to hell." "Oh, well, Dad was a warped old beggar. I thought you and Dad were always so thick. You were always the favourite," said Mum. "Why did Grandad say you'd go to hell, Mum?" I persisted. "Because you ran off with Dad." "I ran off with Barb's boyfriend first," said Mum. I stared at Auntie Barbara. "He was her fiancé, Michael. They had the wedding all planned, honeymoon booked, everything finalised, and I was going to be the bridesmaid," Mum howled. "In a lilac dress with freesias in your hair," said Auntie Barbara. "And I was going the whole hog, marrying in ivory lace, with a bouquet of purple freesias and white roses. I was much too big for white lace even in those days, but I was on a strict diet, scheduled to lose 3 stone in 3 months. Yep, it was all planned, every detail." You didn't plan for me to ruin it all, said Mum. I didn't even like him much. I thought he was a bit boring, really. He was boring, said Auntie Barbara. I always knew exactly what he was going to say. But you didn't know what he was going to do. Well, certainly, he didn't seem the type to go after my little sister. Did you love him, Auntie Barbara? I asked. Maybe I thought I did. At the time, she said, sighing. I didn't mean things to get out of hand, said Mum. I was just having a little flirt with him. Only things kind of escalated. You were only 16. You were just messing about. I blamed Michael more than you. Why wouldn't you take him back? He begged you. He never really stopped loving you. Couldn't you see that? I'm not so sure. Anyway, it was beside the point. I stopped loving him. I didn't want him anymore. Maybe you'll meet someone else, Auntie Barbara, I said. I don't think I want anyone now, said Auntie Barbara. I like being on my own, totally independent. I would have loved children, though. Well, you can share mine, said Mum. And if I don't make it, stop it. You will make it, Mum. If you look after the kids, Barbs, you know I will. Jay might make more trouble. I'll sort him out, said Auntie Barbara, and I'll sort you out too if you don't stop rabbiting. You need some sleep. Mum kept to her bed for a few days. We tiptoed around the flat. Kendall had to keep the television turned right down. We couldn't always turn him right down too. He kept crying over the slightest thing. Couldn't you try to be a good boy, Kendall? I begged him. No, I want to be bad, said Kendall. He kept pestering me while I was working on a very special get well card for Mum. I designed a beautiful country landscape with bluebirds and apple blossom and newborn lambs and a stream with white swans. I'd cut out 4 figures walking into the sunset, hand in hand, Mum, Kendall, Auntie Barbara and me. I used up the whole of a Cadbury's chocolate wrapper for Auntie Barbara's purple party frock. I stuck little pink feathers around Mum's shoulders to make a furry jacket and sequins on her feet for sparkly shoes. I stuck her a bit too high up so that she floated a few inches above the ground even after I turned her shoes into very high stilettos. The feathers looked a bit odd too. They looked too much like angels' wings. Let me see, said Kendall. Let George see too, Lola Rose. Look, get that filthy toy out of my face, I said irritably. George was covered in jam and glue and general grime. He needs a wash. He doesn't like washes. He wouldn't mind a proper swim, though. Can we go and see the real George soon, Lola Rose? No, of course we can't. Not with Mum so ill. Auntie Barbara could take us. She's looking after Mum. You know she is. You could take us. Oh, yeah, sure. Why won't you? Is it because you're scared? Shut up, Kendall. Quit bugging me. Go and see if Mum's awake and wants a drink. Auntie Barbara was taking a nap too because she'd been up with Mum half the night. I don't want to see Mum. She's scary now. Don't be silly. She could be sick on me. No, she won't. I think she's stopped being sick now. She'd eaten boiled eggs and toast and then soup for lunch and kept them all down. I warned Kendall I'd throw George in the rubbish if he dared touch my get well card and went to check on Mum myself. She was propped up on her pillows having a cigarette. You shouldn't be smoking, Mum. Why? Will it give me cancer? She said, laughing at me. Auntie Barbara stirred. She was wedged tightly into the armchair, her head resting on her arms. I think she's stuck there forever, Mum whispered. She'll have to walk around with a great big chair stuck on her bum. Mum, you are dreadful. Yeah. Hey, Lola Rose, I'm starving. What can I have to eat? I could make you boiled egg and soldiers. I'm sick of all that kiddie muck. How about running down the chippy, eh? We still didn't have any money of our own, so I had to take Auntie Barbara's purse out of her bag. I knew she wouldn't mind. I skipped like a little kid down the road to the chip shop. I came charging out holding a big, warm, greasy bag of chips and barged straight into Ross. Hey, it's little Lola Rosy Posy. Coming for a snog then? No thanks, I said, dodging past. I ran up the road, my feet barely touching the pavement, like Mum's stilettos in my picture. Mum seemed so much better. She was over the worst now, wasn't she? Chapter 22. Terror. I woke in the middle of the night. I could hear footsteps, whispering, groaning. I slid out of bed and ran into the living room. Is Mum sick again? Auntie Barbara was bending over Mum. She's very hot, she said. Put the light on, Lola Rose, so I can have a look at her. I put the light on. Mum seemed okay at first glance. Pink cheeks, bright eyes, too pink. Too bright. She's got a fever. I think we'd better get her to the hospital, said Auntie Barbara. No, I hate that hospital, Mum mumbled. You're ill, lovey. You need to get that fever down, said Auntie Barbara. Help me bundle her up, Lola Rose. I'm going to drive her to the hospital. I wrapped the duvet around Mum. She was burning hot, but shivering. What the bloody hell is wrong with me now? She wailed. It'll be your white blood cells. I've been reading up about cancer treatment, said Auntie Barbara, wringing out a cold flannel and putting it on Mum's forehead. The chemo's knocked them for 6, so you haven't got any resistance to infection. You're such an old brain box, said Mum. So what happens next, Dr. Barbs? Is it curtains? Of course not. You're such a drama queen. You'll be better in no time, said Auntie Barbara, though she didn't sound too sure. Kiss Mum goodbye, Lola Rose. I kissed both her hot pink cheeks. You are going to get better, Mum. You have to. Yeah, we wish, said Mum. Auntie Barbara lifted her up in her arms as if she were a baby. She carried her out of the front door and down the stairs to the car. I watched from the window as Auntie Barbara got her car door open and stowed Mum carefully in the back seat. They drove off. I watched the red back lights, and then I watched the darkness where they'd been. The voice of doom started up. That's the last time you'll see your Mum. Shut up, that's rubbish. You're rubbish, Auntie Barbara said she's going to get better. She would do, wouldn't she? But you know she's wrong. Your Mum's going to die. She's not, I said. I put my hands over my ears, but it was inside my head. She's going to die. There's nothing you can do about it. I'll wish, I'll pray, I'll promise anything. I thought of all the fairy tales I'd read at school, the dangerous quests, the impossible tasks. I'll do anything. Anything at all? Yes, anything. Right, what are you most afraid of? My dad. He doesn't scare you so much now. Then what? What gives you nightmares? Sharks? You got it. So go back to the aquarium, stand in the shark tank, stand at it, lean against the glass, so they swim right up close. I can't. Stay there and count 60 seconds, and again, 60 times, till you've stayed a full hour. But I'll scream. I'll be sick. I can't. Not even to save your mother? I knew the voice wasn't real. I knew it was me, making it all up, but I couldn't control what it was saying. I thought of those great fishy heads, gliding past, those awful staring eyes, the rows of jagged teeth. I started shaking as if they were swimming just the other side of the window. I couldn't do it. Yes, I could. It wasn't much to ask. Any other child could do it, easy peasy. I had to try for Mum. I went to the sofa bed and buried my face in Mum's pillow, breathing in her sweet, musky scent. Auntie Barbara came back as dawn was breaking. Her face was screwed up. When she saw me, she tried to smooth it out into a smile. It's okay, Lola Rose. Mum's being looked after in hospital. They're pumping antibiotics into her. I'm not going to school today. We'll come to the hospital. Kendall and me. You can't, my love. Yes, we can. No. Mum's being nursed in a side room. You can't see her in case you pass on another infection to her. Did I give it to her then? I asked, appalled. No, well, it could have been any of us. Your mum's just so vulnerable at the moment. Auntie Barbara struggled, shutting her eyes. I'd give anything to make her better, Lola Rose. Do you love her, Auntie Barbara? Of course I do, said Auntie Barbara, wiping her eyes. But she was awful to you. She stole your boyfriend. Yes, she did. She was very naughty even as a little girl. Had a special china doll with a long silky crinoline and a parasol. I've got a picture of one. I love those dolls. Well, your mum cut off all her golden ringlets and scribbled blue biro tattoos all over her arms. She said she'd turned her into a punk. I made a fuss, even though I was a bit old for dolls, but by that age. Dad heard me and saw the doll, and then he laid into your mum. He was so hard on her. I cried buckets because it was my fault. Your mum had red slap marks all over her legs. Yes, I've always loved her, like you love Kendall. I don't think I'd love him if he mucked up my doll. Yes, you would. You'd hate him, but you'd love him too. It was awful when I lost touch with your mum, and now that I found her. Auntie Barbara let her voice tail away. She took a deep breath. I'm so glad I found her. And you and Kendall. Now, darling, we'd better go to bed for an hour or two before we have to get up again for school. Auntie Barbara set her alarm clock, but didn't stir when it started ringing. I switched it off quickly. I got Kendall washed and dressed and then organised myself. Where's Mum? He asked. She hasn't died already, has she? Kendall, shh, no. She's had to go back to hospital because she's got a fever. Is she going to die there then? No, she's not going to die. How many more times? Now, we're going to have breakfast quietly. Okay? We don't want to wake Auntie Barbara. But she'll be late taking us to school. I'll take us, like I used to. Auntie Barbara needs to sleep. She's been up all night. Kendall nodded and started eating his breakfast, George on his lap. George got smeared with butter and sprinkled with crumbs. Kendall had dreadful table manners, especially this morning. Don't suck your toast, it's not an ice lolly. You said I had to eat quietly. Toast goes crunch, crunch, crunch if you bite it, said Kendall. Had to smile at him. At least I was going to be doing him a favour this morning. I wrote a note to Auntie Barbara telling her we'd gone to school. I sent our love to Mum, and then I let us out of the flat, shutting the door behind us very gradually so it didn't bang. Kendall ran down the garden path and turned right. No, this way, I said, grabbing his hand. But school's that way. I know, but we're not going to school. Where are we going then? To the hospital to see Mum? No, we're not allowed to now. Not till the fever's gone. So where are we going? You wait and see. I bought 2 children's travel cards at the tube station. I was using Auntie Barbara's money again, but there was nothing else I could do. We're going up to town, said Kendall. All on our own. Yes, it's an adventure, okay? It won't get scary, will it? Not for you. He didn't know what I was getting at. He didn't twig until we were walking along the embankment. This is the way to the aquarium. Yep. Oh, Lola Rose, are you taking me to see George? That's right. But you hate sharks? Yes. You won't go in? I will this time. Though I wasn't so sure now, I stood still for a moment. What's the matter? I feel a bit funny. Kendall peered at me. You look funny, all whitey green like you're going to be sick. I do feel a bit sick. You better wait outside. I'll go in all by myself. I'm not scared, Kendall bragged. I knew you wouldn't dare. I'm coming in too. I stumbled into the reception area and paid, pretending we were with another family up ahead of us. It was very dark. There were watery sounds all around us, as if we dived straight into an ocean. There suddenly seemed no way out. I saw a door, but it said staff only, no entry. Trespassers will be fed to the sharks. Come on, it's downstairs, said Kendall, rushing ahead. Wait for me, I cried, grabbing his hand. Your hand's all wet, Lola Rose. Let go. No, please, wait, Kendall. I want to see George. He jerked his hand free and hurtled down the stairs to the next level. I ran after him, fish wriggling and squirming in tanks on either side of me. And then I saw the great tank looming. Crowds gathered around. George! Kendall cried, rushing to the glass. I cowered at the other side of the walkway, narrowing my eyes until I couldn't see the dark shapes gliding through the water. I couldn't breathe. It was as if I were in the water too, drowning. I wanted to walk up to the shark tank and spread myself fearlessly against the glass window, but I couldn't. I heard Kendall calling, George, here! George, here, boy! As if he were calling his pet dog. Then I blinked and saw George swimming towards him, his mouth opening wide. Kenny! I screamed. It looked like he was about to be swallowed whole. I ran towards him, trying to snatch him from those terrible jaws. Stop it! Stop grabbing at me! I'm fine! I'm not a bit scared, Kendall said furiously, pushing me away. I was scared. There I was against the glass, George darting past, his cold alien eyes acknowledging me. It's me. I'm here, Lola Rose, I whispered. I can do it. I can outstare you. You can swim past again and again. You can open your awful mouth and bare all those teeth at me. But I'm not going to move. I'm going to stay here, nose to nose with all of you for an entire hour. I'm going to make my mum better, you'll see. I counted the seconds, over and over and over. Kendall watched me for a while, but then he hunched up in a corner, chin on his knees, just waving languidly every time George came into view. He was sometimes stepped on. The shark tank was the major attraction of the aquarium. People kept trying to elbow me out of the way, but I stood fast. I wouldn't even let little toddlers in front of me. I couldn't understand why they weren't all terrified. Some of them grinned at the sharks as if they were goldfish. A few of the adults were scared, though, squealing and running away. I stuck it out as the fish swam round and round and round, never once colliding. The ghost-like stingrays followed each other as if they were doing a slow dance routine. The golden trevallies swam in shoals. The sharks swam independently as if they were each all alone in the tank. The nurse shark, the zebra shark, the sand tiger shark, and the brown sharks. I watched them, and every single time they swam past, my heart thumped, and sweat sprang out on my forehead. I felt sick. I needed the toilet. I couldn't stop shaking, but I stayed there. I counted each second till I got to 3,600. Then I moved. I'd made a misty impression against the glass. It looked like a ghost Lola Rose had pushed her way right through the glass and was in the tank, swimming with the sharks. You're obviously a real shark enthusiast, said an attendant in a bright yellow T-shirt. I smiled at him weakly, rubbing my forehead. You should come one time when they're being fed. I imagined those jaws ripping, chewing, swallowing. I shuddered. How do you feed them? You don't get in the tank with them, do you? No, we feed the conger eels in the tank, but not the sharks. You'd end up as food yourself, I said. No, not these babies. We do swim among them sometimes, but not when the public's around. You don't. I didn't know if he was kidding me or not. Yes, we do, he said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out something white and pointed. Shark's tooth, he said. Then he held it out in his hand. Go on, you can have it, seeing as you're so interested. Really? My hand closed around the tooth before he could change his mind. They're meant to bring you luck. Thank you so much, I whispered, clenching the tooth tightly in the palm of my hand. The attendant walked off with a nod and a wink. What did that man give you? Kendall asked. Oh, just a peppermint, I said quickly. I put my hand up and pretended to eat it. You don't like peppermint, do you? I like Kendall mint cake, said Kendall. I do too, I said. Come on, we'll buy you an ice cream because you've been so good. I kept the shark's tooth hidden in my hand all the way home. I felt mean because I knew Kendall would be thrilled if he knew about it, but he'd want it for himself. I had to keep it safe until I could give it to Mum. I was sure it was a lucky talisman, able to work magic and make Mum better. I'd endured the hour-long torture of the shark tank. This was a sign that I had completed my task. I had shown the voice of doom. Mum was going to get better.
Chapter 23. Lady Luck. Auntie Barbara was out when we got back, obviously at the hospital. I wished we'd stayed up in London. It was a long, long afternoon. Then Auntie Barbara came back at last. I heard her hurrying up the stairs. When she burst through the front door, she could barely speak. She was so out of breath. Her hair was tumbling out of her ponytail, and there were damp patches on her blue shirt. "Where have you been?" she gasped. "I went to the school to pick you up, and you weren't there. Miss Balsam said you hadn't been at school all day. How could you do this to me, Lola Rose, at a time like this? I'm sorry. I had to go to the aquarium. I didn't want to worry you. I left a note." "Don't you dare do that ever again," said Auntie Barbara. "You went to the aquarium? For goodness sake, hasn't Kendall been there enough times already?" "It wasn't for Kendall. It was for me. To make Mum better," I said. "She is better, isn't she, Auntie Barbara?" I held the shark's tooth so that it dug into my palm. Auntie Barbara looked at me. She was struggling, and then tears started splashing down her flushed face. "No, she's worse," she said, starting to sob. "They can't get her temperature down. The antibiotics don't seem to be working. That's why I came to collect you. You're not allowed to see Mum, but I thought you could call to her from the corridor." "She's dying, isn't she?" said Kendall. "No," I said. "Maybe she might be dying, Lola Rose," said Auntie Barbara. She put her arm around my shoulder. "She can't be. I made her better. I stood right next to the sharks. They swam right up close, but I didn't run away. I've got the magic tooth. She can't be dying," I sobbed. "What did I do wrong? Should I have stayed longer? What?" "Stop it, Lola Rose. You haven't done anything wrong. You haven't made Mum ill, and you can't make her better, no matter what you do." "I can. I've tried so hard. I've got the lucky shark's tooth. Look. Let me see." "Where did you get it? I want it," Kendall cried, trying to snatch it. "It's Mum's," I said, holding it high above his head. "Then we'll go and give it to her," said Auntie Barbara. "But it's a present, Lola Rose. It's not magic. It can't make her better." "It can." "Well, we can give it a go," said Auntie Barbara. "I'm going to have the quickest wash and change ever, kids, okay? Ready in 5 minutes. I decided to change too. I put on my best black top and purple velvet skirt. It was too hot for a furry jacket, but I wore it anyway. I dressed Kendall in his black leather jacket, although he complained, and he went on and on about the shark's tooth. "I keep telling you, Kendall, it's for Mum, but when we go back to the aquarium, I'll ask for one for you." "Not when you're meant to be at school," said Auntie Barbara, bright pink from her quick bath. She wore her purple tie silk two-piece edged with silver braid and her silver flip-flop sandals. "You look lovely, Auntie Barbara." "Thank you, Lola Rose. So do you. And you too, Kendall. Okay, have you got your shark's tooth? Right then, darlings, off we go." We met Andy and Steve coming up the stairs. "You look like you're going to a party," said Steve. The voice of doom bellowed through the banisters. A farewell party. I clutched my shark's tooth so hard all the way to the hospital that it scored a deep red patch on my palm. "It's bitten you," said Kendall. We trailed along endless polished corridors. Kendall's sandals squeaked, my heels tapped, and Auntie Barbara's flip-flops slapped at every step. When we got to Mum's ward, Auntie Barbara made us wait, while she went into the side room where they were now nursing her. We waited a long time. I took Kendall's hand. "That's not the shark tooth's hand, is it? I don't want it to bite me too." "It's my other hand. It's in my other hand. It's okay." "It isn't okay, is it, Lola Rose?" Kendall said, weaving his fingers into mine. "What have they done with our Mum? Why won't they let us go and see her? We might be too germy, but Auntie Barbara says we can call to her. Shall we try calling now? What will we say?" "Anything. Stuff like, 'We love you, Mum. Get better soon.'" "I shall feel silly calling out," said Kendall. "All these ill people will stare at us." "We'll go right up close, by the door. Come on." We walked to the door of Mum's side room. It was half open. I peeped around fearfully. Mum was there in the bed, but she had a mask over her face and tubes running in and out of her. I could only be sure she was Mum because of the blonde hair tumbled on her pillow. A nurse was taking her temperature and arguing with Auntie Barbara. "It's more than my life's worth to let the kids in, you know that," she said. "What does it matter now?" said Auntie Barbara. "Think of the children. They need to see their Mum. And it could just help her. She loves those kids so." "I think she's out of it already," said the nurse. I started crying and the nurse looked up. She saw me and then nodded. "Okay, quick. Come and see your Mum for 2 minutes, but I'm scooting out of here, right?" Kendall and I tiptoed towards the bed. Auntie Barbara carefully threaded her arm through all Mum's tubes and stroked her clenched fist. "Nicky, sweetheart,
The kids are here. Janie and Kenny. Lola Rose and Kendall. They've come to say hello. Mum's eyes stayed shut. Her hand didn't unclench. Mum, I said. Can you hear me, Mum? Listen, I want you to have this. I reached for her clenched hand and gently prized her fingers open. I squeezed the shark's tooth inside. There. You'll never guess what it is, Mum. It's a shark's tooth. A real one. It's really, really lucky. I did this hour-long ordeal and it was my reward. It's going to make you better. Mum didn't stir. I haven't got a shark's tooth to give you, but I can have a whole shark if you can have a whole shark if you want, said Kendall. He thrust grubby George under Mum's arm. Did you hear that, Mum? Kendall's giving you George, I said. Not forever and ever, Kendall said. It's just a borrow. But you can keep the shark's tooth. When you're better, we could bore a hole in it and hang it on a piece of string around your neck. I'm not wearing a tacky bit of string, Mum mumbled, making us all jump. She opened her eyes. You're still alive, Mum, I sobbed. Of course I am. And I'm going to get better. I've got to look after you two, haven't I? Now clear off, kids. I've got a lousy headache, and you're doing my head in. We kissed her burning forehead. Auntie Barbara, then Kendall, then me. I took George back because I knew Kendall wouldn't be able to sleep without him. And George was a total germ trap too. I've made you better, haven't I, Mum? I whispered. I've made me better, said Mum. I can do anything. I'm Lady Luck, aren't I? Chapter 24. Fingers crossed. Mum's fever went down, but she had to stay in hospital for a while. Then she was well enough to come home, though she still had to go for her treatment. First the chemotherapy, weeks of it. All Mum's beautiful long blonde hair started falling out after the second treatment. It was so scary at first. Kendall and I were cuddled up with her in bed in the morning, and when she sat up, great long locks of her hair stayed on her pillow. Oh my God, Mum gasped. She put her hands to her head, feeling the bald patches. This is just like being in a bloody horror movie. Never mind, Mum. It's only a few curls, I lied. Mum's fingers ran along her scalp, feeling. More hair fell out there and then, fluttering down over her nightie in long pale strands. Mum started whimpering, hanging onto her head with both hands as if she were trying to keep the rest of her hair in place. Kendall started crying too, his eyes screwed up so he couldn't see Mum properly. What's up now? Said Auntie Barbara, sailing into the room in the great black silky caftan she wore as a nightie. Look, Mum wailed. Oh God, your hair, you poor love, said Auntie Barbara. Right, I know what we can do, Lola Rose. You got a pair of sharp scissors, haven't you? It's cut my throat time, right? Mum sniffed. I'm going to cut your hair, Nick. No, I've always had long hair. It's part of me. Not any more, darling, said Auntie Barbara sadly. Come on, sit on the chair. We'll get snipping. It'll be less strain on the roots if it's very short. Maybe we'll be able to keep some of it. That way. Auntie Barbara cut Mum's hair really short. I gathered up all the locks and twisted them into a big soft plait and tied it up with purple ribbon. You can pin it back on, Mum, I said. It's not going to work. I look awful. Like a skinhead, said Mum, crying. No. You know who you do look like, Mum? I said, staring at her ruffled short hair and pale face on her little stork neck. Kendall. Great, said Mum. But then she wiped her eyes and stuck out her bottom lip and lisped, I want George. Her Kendall imitation was spot on, and we all laughed. Cutting her hair so short didn't really work. It all fell out anyway, until poor Mum was completely bald. Her head looked horribly naked. The hospital gave her a wig, but it didn't look right, and Mum said it itched like crazy. She cut up some of Auntie Barbara's tie silk into scarves, wound them round and round her head, and then she pinned the plait I'd made her at the back. That looks ever so pretty, Mum, I said. Pretty frightful, said Mum, peering into the mirror and sighing. She puffed out her cheeks. And I'm not just an old baldy bonce. I'm getting fat. I always thought you got thin when you got cancer. Mum really was getting fatter. The chemotherapy drugs gave her a big round face and a big round body too. Yuck. Look at me, she said, struggling to pull her zip up over her stomach. I'm going to have to buy some new jeans. New everything. Even her lovely white jacket was too tight for her. You'd better have it, Lola Rose, she said. It's yours, Mum. You'll get thin again when you're better. I don't think I'm ever going to get better. And what's the bloody point if I end up looking like a freak? I can't stick being so fat. Auntie Barbara sniffed. Shut up, skinny. Try being me. But Auntie Barbara wasn't quite as fat as she had been. She wasn't on a diet, but she didn't have time to eat so much while she was running around looking after us, rushing back to see the pub at weekends. Maybe I'll fit into some real clothes soon, said Auntie Barbara. If so, I'll turn my purple silk wraparound into a bedspread for you, Lola Rose. No, I'll need it. I'm blowing up like a bouncy castle, said Mum. You're not. You're still weeny compared to me, said Auntie Barbara. Well, that's not hard, said Mum. Mum, don't be mean, I said. Mum pulled her face. I'm allowed to be mean. I'm the one that's ill, and at least Barb's still got a full head of hair. Yours will grow back, I promise. It'll be as blonde and curly as ever, said Auntie Barbara, giving Mum a hug. Just wait till you've finished your chemotherapy. Then it'll be radiotherapy. Therapy. Is that a fancy word for torture? First they poison you and then they burn you. But they make you better, said Auntie Barbara. Now quit your moaning. You quit your nagging. They weren't really arguing. It was just their little game with each other. They started singing their sister's song, harmonising beautifully. We'll have to do a star turn down the trout, said Auntie Barbara. Oh yeah, and do a spot of lap dancing too. I'm serious, Auntie Barbara looked at Mum, her eyes very blue. Why don't you and the kids come and move in with me? You'd go down really great with all the regulars. I'll give you a half share in the pub. You should have had it in the first place. You can help me to modernise it. What do you think? I held my breath. Mum's face screwed up. She blinked and tears spilled down her cheeks. Yeah, all right, she said, like she'd just been offered a cup of tea. But she reached out and clasped Auntie Barbara's hands tight. What do you think, Lola, Rose and Kendall? Asked Auntie Barbara. How do you fancy living in the pub with me? Can I drink beer? Kendall asked. No, but you can drink Coke and have lots of packets of crisps, said Auntie Barbara. And I've got a lovely big pub garden. Tell you what, we could have a little pond with goldfish. I don't think we could have real trout, even though it would be appropriate. And no sharks, except for my George. Could he swim in it? If he really wants to, said Auntie Barbara. Lola Rose, would you like to live at the Trout? There's lots of little attic rooms. You could have your own bedroom, purple of course. And there's a big old screen somewhere. Maybe you'd like to decorate it with scraps. I took a deep breath. She didn't need to try to persuade me. It sounded like a fairy tale. It would be wonderful, I said. I'm going to miss my friend Harpreet, of course. I've never had a best friend before, so it'll be horrible saying goodbye. Still, maybe her mum will let her come and stay in the holidays. Mrs. Gabry still doesn't think much of my mum, but she approves of Auntie Barbara. She actually invited her in for a cup of tea the other day. I'll miss Miss Balsam too. I like it at Lark Rise, especially the art lessons. Still, I'll have a new school to go to now. I'm going to stay Lola Rose, and then maybe I'll make lots of new friends. I won't miss this house much, though I will miss Andy upstairs. He and Steve are getting this new place soon, and Miss Parker might be going into a home. We're all moving on. It's definite now. Mum and Kendall and me are going to live at the Trout, though it's not going to be called that for much longer. I could never stick the name, said Mum, and if we're going to run it together, Barb, we don't want all the guys to call us the two old Trouts. So, we'll change the name, no problem, said Auntie Barbara. What should we call it, eh? What about the Singing Sisters? Big Sister and Little Sister, said Mum. Only I'm the blooming big sister now. Stop it, said Auntie Barbara. You'll get your figure back soon enough, you'll see. Though it'll be hard for you to go on a diet living at the pub. Wait till you try our Thai green chicken curry. We all knew Mum could still pull any bloke she fancied, fat or thin. She'd like it at the pub because she'd meet lots and lots of men. I wish she didn't need them so much, but she can't seem to help it. Still, I don't think she'll ever want Dad back again. I don't really worry about Dad now. Auntie Barbara will protect us if he ever comes back. I worry about Mum, even though she's getting better. She really is. The hospital is very pleased with her progress. Mr. Key says her chances are very good now. I don't know why. It was probably the treatment, even though she nearly died after that first week. She was lucky. You can't make lucky things happen. You can't win the lottery every day. I know it was just chance that Mum got better after I'd endured the shark ordeal. A lucky coincidence. But I still feel good every time I look at the shark's tooth hanging on the fine silver chain around her neck. We're going to live happily ever after, Mum and Auntie Barbara and Kendall and me. Fingers crossed. And that is the end of Lola Rose by Jacqueline Wilson. Really hope you enjoyed that story, guys. I'll be back soon with lots more stories and videos coming your way very soon. If you'd like to subscribe or hit a like, it's always appreciated. Thanks for listening, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.